Welcome to Dear Book Coach. I'm Carrie Savage, writer, certified book coach, and project manager.
And I'm Stephanie Detlefs, writer and certified book coach.
And I'm Terry Thayer, writer, certified book coach, and certified focusing professional.
This is a friendly advice space for you as you plan, draft, and revise your novel. In each video, we answer a question submitted by a writer like you with 3 different points of view, and you get to pick the advice that resonates with you. So today we have a little bit of a personal question for the book coaches. You guys are putting us on the hot seat. And the question is, when did you know that you were a writer? So, Stephanie, would you like to field that one first?
Yeah, this is fun to get to answer this question. I have, in my own mind, always been a writer. There's never been a time in my life where I didn't call myself a writer. I started, like a lot of people do, writing stories when I was little in elementary school, writing and illustrating little stories and then stapling them in construction paper and designing the cover. And there's a family story in our family about, and I remember sort of vaguely making one of those stories for my grandpa's birthday that was called Why Grandpas Are Special. And it was about a grandpa who bought his granddaughter a pony and kept it in his own yard because he knew her yard was too small and her parents had said no. And that was his birthday present. So, subtlety has never been my strong suit, but yeah, when I was a kid, I planned to be an author. I love to read. I saw myself writing books like the Ramona series and Nancy Drew and all those books that I was reading when I was a kid. I think that I was a student who got a lot of positive feedback about my writing skills. And so I internalized that I was a good writer from a pretty early age. Somewhere along the line, I think I also internalized the societal message that being an author wasn't a real job. And so I started, when I was in high school, I decided I was going to major in journalism in high school, or in college rather. So I went away to college planning to major in print journalism, which lasted for one class that I hated and almost failed, at which point I totally changed my plan and had kind of a lightning bolt of inspiration about becoming a teacher because I also really liked working with kids and had done so for a lot of years. And then that plan took a front seat for the next 25 years, but all along I called myself a writer. Writing was always my favorite subject to teach. I would take writing classes. I would start and abandon projects over the years, but I was always wanting to get back into it more consistently. So even though now my career is more writing focused, writing centered, I've never not been a writer in my own head. And I've never been afraid to call myself a writer. So I always encourage you to do that whenever you can, if that's what you want for yourself. That's my story. Thanks for asking. Terry, how about you?
So I think I didn't think of myself as a writer when I was a child. I think probably in Catholic school, we didn't write much fiction. And so my path to writing was a little more circuitous. I knew I was a good writer in high school. I was on the newspaper, and my English teacher, Mr. Robinson, always gave me good grades and gave me a lot of encouragement to write. But my older brother was 4 years older, was already writing, and he was a real writer in my mind. He's every day after work, he was typing away in his little bedroom in his apartment in New York. And he had a New York agent for a while, and he got very close to being published. So there was really only room for one writer in the family, and I was too intimidated to call myself a writer. But the dream, as it does, never really faded. And in the 80s, I got laid off from a job, and computers and word processors were new. So we bought one of those, and I sat down to write every day. And I did, but I didn't know anyone who was a writer. I had a subscription to Writer's Digest. That was about all I had. And I decided to write a romance because they seem to sell a lot. I pretended to not notice that I never read romance. And so, but I wrote the book and I got it critiqued by Writer's Digest, but I honestly didn't take any of their advice because I didn't know what it meant. So I finished it, sent it off to a couple publishers. When it was rejected, I literally just put it in a drawer and said, okay, I'm done with that. Tried it, done. But then about 10 years later, I saw Laurie R. King, who's an author, a mystery author, speak. And I was struck by what a wonderful life she was leading. She was a mom and a wife and to a professor, and she wrote during the school year, and they traveled and researched her books during the summer. It just sounded great. So I joined the California Writers Club, which had sponsored that event, and found a critique partner and started writing. And having a critique group made all the difference for me, and the support of the California Writers Club. I hadn't known any writers before that. I kind of had the image of, you know, a writer putting a gun in his mouth like Ernest Hemingway, or drinking themselves to death. And so I knew I didn't want that. But when I started meeting kind of normal people that were writers, then it opened up some doors for me. Joined my critique group, and so for 6 years I wrote my first book over and over again, as you do. But I started sending it out, and I found one agent who was interested. And so in the spring of 2006, I got an agent, and in that fall she got me 2 different contracts for 2 different series. So I was officially a writer and a published author, and that's how it started for me. How about you, Carrie?
There's going to be a lot of, I think, similar elements among our stories. I too sort of it was actually second grade. I think it was the crystallizing moment in my mind when we had to write short stories. I don't know if it was the first time I'd ever had to think about writing in that way or not, but it was this particular story, and the book, it was the book. The story was supposed to be like 2 or 3 pages long, and you know, it's double spaced, and we're writing in our seven-year-old handwriting, which I'm sure was, you know, that big. And it's supposed to be 2 to 3 pages. I wrote like 7 or 10 or something ridiculous like that, because I just got into it and I loved it so much. And it was about a boy who goes to live under the sea with octopi because he doesn't want to live with his family anymore. So nothing against my family. I wasn't, you know, projecting anything there, but it was just so fun and very similar. Stephanie, I feel like I've always sort of been told that writing, that I'm good at it. It's something that I do with a fair level of skill. So, you know, you definitely internalize those things that you're good at. I was terrible at geometry. So, you know, spatial relationships still freak me out, but writing is one of those things that I think I've always felt really good at and really validating. So I remember thinking that it was super fun that I got to live in this imaginary world and create this stuff in my head. And like both of you guys, I was also a voracious reader. I read everything and anything and still do. So I was like, yep, writing life for me. However, it didn't exactly turn out that way, of course. I did go to school to get a creative writing degree. But even as I was getting that degree, I'm thinking to myself, like, there was never any question of like, I'm going to even go to an MFA program. Actually, it was like, well, I'm going to graduate with like a BFA, and then maybe I'll try to get a publishing job, or I'll just try to find something that, you know, will let me be sort of creative in my thinking, I guess, which is not at all how it ended up. It was 2001. The job market was terrible. I took something that was not, I was not long lived for, and that's a whole nother story, but it was good and bad. I figured then that, you know, maybe I could be a writer, I could be a journalist. And I went to grad school to be a journalist, and I learned that, I don't know whether it's my introversion or my New England upbringing or what, but I don't have it in me to be a journalist. I can't ask people invasive questions about themselves. It's just not what I was taught to do, and I couldn't quite overcome it. So that was a really expensive lesson, but I did still learn a lot about different kinds of writing. So I fell into project management, and it was another thing that I guess, you know, I'm good at. But I realized about 5 years ago that I couldn't do it full time anymore. It was burning me out. And I loved the company I worked for. I still do work for them somewhat, but I can't do it full time. And so my husband and I said, I can't do this. And he said, all right, well, you always wanted to write a book, right? And I said, really? Yeah, I did. So, and then I learned about book coaching, and that just felt like such a wonderful fit, a marriage of these two things. And I know kind of gotten off topic a little bit, but yeah, that's been my writing life. I've been working on this novel for the past 5 years, and but I've always in my mind thought of myself as a writer more than anything else, even if there's that what I do for a profession, what I get paid for, and then there's sort of who you are as, I don't know, your identity, or how you see yourself in the world. And I've always thought of myself as being a writer and a reader, and just in that book world. My favorite things, books.
Books.
Books, hooray for books.
I love books.
I used to say, if I could just be paid to sit in a room full of books, I don't want to sell them or check them out or have to talk to anybody about them. I just want to sit in a room, I'll just protect them and just sit there, right? That would be my perfect job. Get paid. I don't think anybody pays for that.
Yeah, I told Jenny she invented my perfect job, which is getting to read other people's books. And
Yeah. I there were a couple of things that I heard in all three of our stories. One thing was just that idea of, you can be a lot of different things, right? In your life, whether it's in phases or multiple things at one time. Most of us, all of us, have more than one role in our lives. And so there's no reason why. I mean, I called myself a writer even when I hadn't written anything for years, more than 1 year, and so it's okay. It's more of an internal sense of yourself than I think it is about, so what have you written, and where can I read what you've written, and what have you published, and those kinds of surface level. I think that's more surface level. And then I just wanted to go back to Terry's story about finding community. It does make a really big difference, because you start to realize that you're not alone when it's hard. Other people struggle with it. You're not alone with the self-doubt and the perfectionism and all the other things that you may or may not be struggling with. So community is huge. So I'm glad you shared that part.
So true.
Yeah. And that is it for today. So that was a fun question. We hope, we hope you found something in our stories that resonates with you at this point in your life and in the book that you're working on. Remember, you can submit your question to us anytime at dearbookcoach.com. And while you're there, subscribe to our weekly email and be eligible monthly to win a call with one of us. So we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.